I'm Heidi Hutner, host of Coffee with Hx2. Today on our show, I'll be speaking with Josh Fox, filmmaker of Gasland, and his most recent film is How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things That Climate Can't Change. In this film, Josh addresses what's happening with climate change in our world today, and he goes around the planet talking to people from every culture. So Josh, in talking to you today, I'd like to ask, what's the most pressing issue with climate change?
The fact that we're so far in addressing the issue. We've already warmed the Earth by about 1 degree. What that means is we've seen increased storms, increased droughts, increased floods, sea level rise to the point to which some cities are already experiencing flooding, like Miami Beach. We have enough carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere now to bring us to 1.5 degrees no matter what we do. So we're already in a state where we're at 1.5 degrees. At 2 degrees warming, we push the climate to such a brink that we engender about 5 to 9 meters of sea level rise. And that's an unstoppable process because of the glaciers and the ice caps that start to melt at that point. 5 to 9 meters of sea level rise means that New York City is uninhabitable, so is Philadelphia, so is Washington, D.C., so are Oakland, Charleston, Miami, New Orleans. In fact, those cities start to become in grave trouble even way before that. So the idea that we're going to stop some of the most horrific and difficult consequences of climate change, the chances are extraordinarily slim, if none. So we have to start to think a little bit about what do we do and what kind of a society are we that will withstand those types of changes. Because human beings are going to be navigating the most intense period of change that they've ever seen on the planet Earth. So what do we have to do? The idea of letting go of the world, I think, has to do with the world of greed and the world of competition and the world of violence and the world of consumerism. That is sort of underpinning values that are driving the climate problem. 10% of the population, the top 10%, of the world is responsible for 50% of the emissions that cause climate change. That means inequality, the system that we're in right now of unchecked corporate greed, and those are some of the main drivers of climate change that we have to start to address. That means that our values have to be looked at, and those are the things that climate can't change. The things that are inside of people: courage, creativity, human rights, democracy, innovation. These are the things that can be instilled in us in such a deep way that no storm can take them away. And the idea of all the things that climate can't change are the things that make us truly human, and that's what the film ends up being about as it travels all across the world. It's going, it starts in New York City with Hurricane Sandy. Well, actually, it starts in the Upper Delaware River Basin with our victory on fracking there. And the realization that even though we can beat the frackers in my own hometown, we might lose everything we love to climate change. And then New York City gets hit by Hurricane Sandy, which is a huge wake-up call, and it was a wake-up call for everyone. So the idea that we're in a dire emergency with climate change spawns a conversation about values, and that takes me all across the world to investigate, people in the Amazon who are looking at oil spills deep into the jungle, to the South Pacific to work with people whose islands are going underwater, to China to investigate the impacts of the human rights debate on climate and on the air pollution problem there. So it's a globe-spanning effort, but it calls into question how we're dealing with climate and asks, can we reinvigorate a dialogue about ethics and about morals when we talk about climate?
So I saw your film, as you know, and I felt very, very privileged to be there and speak to you, and I was deeply moved. And I know you opened the film up with dancing and you closed the film with dancing, which is enormously celebratory, and you talked about building communities and communities of activists, and that is happening in areas that you were supporting as you take this film around. But what can people do? I mean, when I hear this, I have a daughter, she's 18, and I'm thinking this is the world that she's going to be an adult in. What can I say to her?
Well, that's precisely why we're taking the film on the road. The film will premiere on HBO June 27th. That is going to be our biggest reach. HBO has been an incredible distributor for these films and also the Gasland films because they go into 40 million homes across America, and people can really see the film universally almost. If you can be at a person's house who has HBO, or we do house parties, is a huge outreach. But specifically for the movement and specifically for the fights that are happening against the fossil fuel industry, we're taking the film to 100 cities across the nation. It's called the Let Go and Love Tour. You can get information about where we're going to be on tour at our website, howtoletgomovie.com. And we go on tour with Aria Joe from the Rockaways. We go on tour with Tim DeChristopher, often, who's in the film, with musicians, with experts on renewable energy, and we interact with the local grassroots groups. Why do we do this? Because the local grassroots groups, to answer your question, are the best way to work on climate change. They're also the best way to expand and understand that it's a community that needs to be created to fight climate change. In many of the same ways that the aesthetics or the values of what Bernie Sanders talks about in terms of the political revolution in America. We're not a kind of film that's going to say, do this one thing, or send this one email, or click this box, and everything's going to be okay. That would be inappropriate and untrue. And as a journalist, I can't recommend that. What I can say, however, is that what you should do is join that local group. The local group needs you. It needs your creativity. It needs your voice. It needs your opinions. It certainly needs young people, because the climate fight is not one big global fight. It's thousands and thousands of local fights, fighting local pipelines, fighting local fossil fuel developments, fighting power plants, growing and creating a renewable energy economy in many ways is going to happen on a local scale. So joining that fight is what I would say, and doing it in a way that you love. For example, I started with making movies about this subject. That was in 2008. You know, if I had decided to sign up and try to be an organizer, I probably would have quit in 3 weeks. I'm a terrible organizer. I can't organize anything. I can make a movie though. You know, so as a filmmaker, I'm still here years later, and I would suggest that that's the right approach to anyone who's joining the movement.
That's a really great call. And I say that to my students all the time, that your film, to look at it, you can see the passion behind it. I'm thinking of Gasland specifically, and how you use that, and how that really spawned a huge movement. And look, we've now banned fracking in New York. And I do credit you for a lot, no lot.
Well, I don't credit me. I think that the film
lots of people.
Well, the film Gasland did play a role, no question. But it was a movement that was already there that sort of needed to know itself. Gasland helped people become alert and aware to the crisis and the issue, and they also became aware of how many other people across the world were in the same boat.
Right. And
in many ways, we're hoping to do the same thing with this new film, that we're trying to say, look, this is happening across the world. We're all involved. We're all in the same boat, from Samoa to China to Europe to New York City, to our coastal cities across America, to our upstate fights against the Constitution Pipeline, or the AIM Pipeline, or the Pilgrim Pipeline, or the Algonquin Pipeline, or the Sable Trail Pipeline. There's so many of these fights that are happening. That's the climate fight. It's universal. We have to understand this. But we also have to rally around a new set of values, values that are exemplified in many ways by this movement. We can't have a society based on greed, competition, and violence as we go forward. We have to start processing community, democracy, human rights, creativity, innovation, resilience, love. These are the things that are the things that climate can't change, and these are the hallmarks. These have to be the hallmarks of our society and our movement going forward.
Well, I thank you so much. I know you have a million things to go do, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you so much for having me on the show, and I'm sorry I have to be a little bit shorter than usual. Yes, things are very intense right now, especially with New York with the primary. I am an official surrogate of the Bernie Sanders campaign. I'm going out to do several speeches in New York and Pennsylvania, so please do get involved with that, because I think that's a big piece. The values that are there really reflect the things that we're talking about in the film and the climate movement is talking about worldwide, so get involved with that.
Thank you so much, Josh. I know your schedule is packed, and you're supporting the Bernie campaign, and I know you're on the trail. So thank you for talking to us about this most urgent matter. And for those of you who want to see more shows, go to HeidiHutner.com. We have many episodes on a variety of sustainable issues. Thanks a lot.